Okay, so in the activity 7, you guys are going to be investigating the solids. And there are 3 things you're going to test for these solids that are in the mixture. You're going to test density, conductivity, and reactivity. And remember, we've been talking about both physical and chemical properties. One thing I want to touch on more in depth is density. Density is not weight. However, it is still a physical property, and that's because the substance that you are testing for density, well, all you're doing is just taking some measurements and possibly putting it in water to see if it sinks or floats. So you're not really changing it. So density is a physical property, and we'll learn this more later, but density, the formula for it is actually mass over volume. So it's just a characterization of the mass of something over the volume. So the mass is how much it weighs over the volume, how much space it takes up. And that's the density. All right, you probably have heard about density when you're talking about sinking or floating. And actually, if something is more dense, if you don't know this already, if something is more dense, it will sink in the substance in which it's more dense. Okay? And if something is less dense, it will float. Okay, so for example, in the first picture down here, you can see the object is floating. Since it is floating, that object is less dense than the liquid that it is in. This picture over here to the right, the green object, is sinking. So because it's sinking, it is more dense than the liquid that it is in. And the picture in the middle, it's kind of floating in the middle. It's not really floating on top, but it's not on the bottom. So we would actually call that having an equal density. Okay, so the last thing I want to talk about is how you can measure density. I am telling you right now that water has a density of 1 gram per centimeters cubed. You might also hear it said 1 gram per milliliter. That would be essentially the same thing, just depending on how you're doing your measurements. So if water is 1 gram per milliliter or 1 gram per centimeter cubed, the object in the water, if it is floating, like if it is sitting up on top, we would consider that less than 1 gram per centimeter cubed. So let me write that. If the object floats, that means it is less than 1 gram per centimeter cubed. Okay? If the object sinks, if it goes down to the bottom of the glass, that means it is more than 1 gram per centimeter cubed. So if the object sinks, that means that it is more than 1 gram per centimeter cubed. Okay, so that's just a brief introduction on density. We're actually going to take some exact measurements on density by taking the object's mass and then the object's volume, but for right now you just need to understand that when you place something in water or in a liquid of any sort, if it floats, it means it is less dense than that liquid, and if it sinks, it means it is more dense than that liquid.